Hello and happy Friday, and welcome to a story time that is a little bit different than the story times I normally upload. Normally, my story times are all about dating or my wild adventures in the romantic sphere of my life. And I recently decided to pull back from that, especially here on my main YouTube channel. So I won't really be sharing those stories anymore, but I still have stories to share. And as a result, I've had this one. I shared it with the Patreons earlier this week. Now, when I shared it on Patreon, it was a little bit longer and a little bit different, but I wanted to share a version of it here with my main YouTube audience as well. This is a story that I hinted at in my video that I made about adult friendships and how sometimes things go down, when you're trying to make friends as an adult or you're trying to do whatever. Sometimes you have things that occur and it really, really makes it hard for the friendship to continue. And that can be like if you have old friends and you get into an argument with them, or you have new friends. And right at the beginning of your friendship, something dramatic occurs. And I talked about this time in that video. I talked about a time where I took a girls' trip out to the deserts of Joshua Tree or out to the Joshua Tree desert, whatever, out to Joshua Tree. And instead of it being a weekend to bond with young women who had something in common with me, because we all met at the Upright Citizens Brigade Theater, instead of it being a weekend of bonding and laughter and, us exploring and growing together, because of one person's actions regarding how they took care of their body on the trip, it turned into the girls' trip from hell. I'm going to be looking into friendships a little bit more coming into the next week. And so I thought I would share this story with you tonight, especially since I haven't uploaded anything else here this week. And here we go. Oh, one more thing. I was motivated to share this story in general, whether it was now on Patreon, it was requested, but I was motivated to share it here because of this tweet. And I think this is such a great idea, especially like as you get to be an adult when it comes to traveling with people. Because I myself, and after you guys hear this story, you'll know what I'm talking about, because I have had bad experiences traveling with people and in groups. I definitely am the type of person that's like, let's give this a what do they call it? A soft opening before we take it all the way. So let's maybe go on an overnight trip or just go on a day trip to somewhere before we agree to go overnight and sleep together and sleep in the same rooms and share the same space. Sometimes it can work out really well. I have had those experiences, but sometimes it doesn't. So my advice to you would be, if you're trying to figure out whether or not you should go on a trip with a new group of people, definitely see if there's a way you can microdose that situation before you're really in a place where you can't escape how horrible everything is. Anyway. Hello. I'm going to go ahead now and share the story of what happened to me a few years ago when I tried to make friends in LA. And we took a trip out of town to Joshua Tree. I had a bad feeling about a person. And I was like, nah, I'll just push through. And well, I ended up having to walk away from the whole situation. Okay, so it was 2018, and I had just taken a class at the Upright Citizens Brigade training company for improv theater, for improv comedy, excuse me. I had watched the careers of people like Nicole Byer and Shahir Zamata. I'll put her real name here. Just multiple people. There's actually a show right now on NBC. I hope it stays on the air, called Grand Crew, and it's just made up of a bunch of folks, black actors and actresses who came out of UCB. UCB is the improv theater started by Amy Poehler and some other people that went on to do great things in comedy. It just was always a part of my LA story for me. Like if I was going to go out to LA, I was going to go to UCB. I was going to study comedy. I was going to become a writer. I was going to be on shows. I was going to work with that was my idea for my life. The issue was that the classes were very expensive, $400 a class, and also like the timing of the classes. So I wasn't your typical like LA improv person, working, like a serving job while my parents paid my rent and I take my flight. Like that's not it. I was working teaching full time. And at the end of a full teaching day, I would then have to go to my UCB class that started at 7. Now, let me make something perfectly clear. Those were the best days of my freaking life. I loved walking down the hallways and hearing the laughter. I loved hearing the joy. I loved it. I loved it so much. My first experience doing those classes was so rich and so rewarding. My second experience was, but my first experience was wonderful and I loved it. And through that first experience, I met two girls. The most exciting thing for me and one of the girls was our very first day walking into UCB. We came in right with each other. And we were both thinking, we're both Black women, and we're both thinking, I wonder where she's going. Because even though a lot of Black actors and actresses come out of UCB, that we see on TV today, that represents such a small percentage of the people that are actually there. It's not weird at all to take a class and not have another Black person in your class. It's actually very cool if there is another Black person in your class. So me and the girl, we are there and we follow each other into the same classroom and we're excited like from the beginning. I don't know how old she is when we first get there. Later on, she would let me know that she was 39. I was 34 at the time. And her attitude for taking the class was awesome. Like, it's never too late. You never know what can happen, right? So I was like, you're exactly right. Like she was an inspiration to me from the beginning. She was a fitness trainer. She was like really fit. She was funny. We could do good scenes together. However, she had a lot of trauma from her childhood. She had been assaulted, she'd been homeless, she had been raised by drug abusers, she'd seen a lot of death, she'd seen a lot of family members go to jail. She had been on her own a lot in her life and had to take care of herself, take care of her brothers and sisters. She'd been through a lot. And a lot of that trauma, those extremely traumatic stories, would come out from time to time in a sketch here and there. Um, they sometimes shook the class. The class was like, oh, because there's a game you can play in improv you where you somebody gives a word and then someone comes forward off the line and tells a story based on that word. And then while the person is telling the story, the other people in the improv line or whatever, they're thinking to themselves, okay, what can I take from this? What can I take from this? And then the second the person is finished with the story, they step back onto the line and the first person who has an idea for a full scene goes up and starts doing that scene. So fun. I loved it. I loved it. Anyway, so sometimes she would tell a story and the group was like, can we laugh at this? Like, is this okay? Are you okay? She was not okay. But I wouldn't find out until we went on our trip together. I met another girl there and she came in and she just had a lot of like, she's a badass energy. Like she like wore like a leather jacket and maybe I made that up. I don't know, but she definitely had a certain type of energy about her. And I didn't realize that she was even funny until she started doing scenes or whatever. And every time she was incredible. And so we started talking and getting to know each other. And about halfway through the class, so the class started in April, I want to say early May, around like Cinco de Mayo time, she lost the job that she'd had. And her monetary problems and money issues really, really started coming into focus. And she would often be like, okay, I can't hang out with you guys after this. I don't have any money. I have like $17. My car broke down, this and that. Like, and it really, really weighed on her, as it would. And so those are the two girls that I had the most in common with in the class. The rest of the class was very young, very white, and we just didn't mix well, like socially. Like we weren't like, we wouldn't hang out socially or whatever. That being said, I talked to these two girls who were really friendly with each other. And when the show ended or when the class ended, a lot of us were like, well, we loved this group that we took a class with. When are you guys taking your next class? So a lot of them immediately registered for the next class. I didn't have the money. I couldn't have registered for the next class. And what we decided was that we were going to wait for each other to try and take the next class or whatever. Or we were just going to, I don't know, but we basically let go of starting a new class right away. But we still wanted to keep in touch. And so we had been talking about, because a lot of the people in that class were not from LA. And so one of the things that we had been talking about for a little bit when I first got into class was taking a trip down to Joshua Tree. I didn't know what Joshua Tree was. I didn't know what Palm Springs was. None of that stuff. I'm from Texas. I've heard of Palm Springs, but I had no idea like what a convenient little getaway city it is when it's not 100 million degrees. But there had been lots of talk about going out to Palm Springs. And so what we decided, or not Palm Springs, Joshua Tree. They wanted to go to Joshua Tree, which is like two, if you've never been to California, it's two completely distinct experiences. Joshua Tree is camping. Joshua Tree is, you know, howling at the moon while beating a drum in a drum circle. Joshua Tree is maybe taking hallucinogens and I don't know, um, you know, asking the universe the big questions of life. That's not what we were going to do out there. Joshua Tree also has a lot of great hiking and museums, but that is what people do there. Whereas Palm Springs is like pools and parties and fun and cute restaurants. So it's just two different vibes. I wanted to go to Palm Springs, but I just figured like I would just roll with it. You know, I was excited to be included. And so the girl, the older girl who was about 39, she decided that what she would do is she would rent a car for us and she would get the Airbnb and we could just pay her as we went. She knew of the other girls' financial issues. And I was just like, whenever you want the money, let me know because it wasn't going to be that expensive to like split between us. So yeah, so we all went, got ready and like went down there. And one of the things that I will say is that I started to get an uneasy feeling about one of the girls before we even went. Something she said about her phone. She refused to download a GIF keyboard. Yeah, on her phone. And this is, you know, millennials, we love our GIFs, right? When we're texting, we love to send those things. And she refused to download it. And when we asked her, like, you know, hey, because she had asked a question, she was like, where are you guys getting all of these little, you know, funny little pictures and things like that when you're sending a text? And me and the other girl were like, oh, wait, we just use blah, blah, blah. This is before like it was already within your iPhone and you had to download another app to be able to do it. And so the other girl was like, oh, yeah, I just downloaded this. Da, 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 da. It's a keyboard that you install. And she goes, nope, I don't do that. They can be watching. And I've mentioned before that I had dealt with somebody who was suspicious of a they, and they ended up being someone who dealt with schizophrenia and paranoid delusions. So when she said they are watching, I was like, okay, what am I dealing with here? And the thing is people struggle with their mental health. They do. But do you know you struggle with it? Are you medicated? Do you take it seriously? That's kind of like the line, right? For me, if I'm going to get into, and this is a new situation, we don't know each other that well. We only have taken a 6-week improv course together. I think it's 8 weeks. So if you have these issues, then you need to be responsible as a person and not just expect everybody to be comfortable with your reality. You can't expect that from people. You can't put that burden on them. That's how I feel about it. So anyway, when she said that, I got a little bit, I was like, okay. And then we went over to her house to get in the car she rented, so on and so forth. And she goes, I asked my boyfriend, oh, this was a thing. So one time in the improv class, we went up together to do a scene. And the scene was about two people that are having a conversation. And you just have to be able to talk about it or something like that. And so the teacher of the class, he gave us a topic and it was dating. Now, at this point, I had been dating in LA, and I've said before, it wasn't the worst thing because it was happening at all versus where I'm at now, where it's like, you know, where just really nothing happens. And that's also because I was using dating apps and my standards were in hell. So yeah, of course, like I'm gonna have more options, but and also people were more open-minded. I've talked about it before, but I was not having a great time. Like even though it was happening, I was definitely witnessing and having some experiences that were a little bit spicy. And so when he brought up dating, I started talking.
about my experiences. And she was like, yeah, and these men be cheap and da. And it was such a funny and engaging conversation that we had at the drop of a hat. And when we left the little scene, the little chairs that were set up in front of the class and went back to take our seats, I was like, girl, you sound like you going through it too. And she was like, actually, no, I've had the same boyfriend for 18 years. And I was like, what? She's like, yeah, I just don't like to talk about him. I don't like people to know about that I'm in a relationship. And I said, oh, okay. And I asked her, I think I asked her before this had happened. I'd asked her if she lived by herself or with someone or had roommates. And she told me she lived with roommates. So now I was putting it together. Okay, this guy is your roommate, your boyfriend of 18 years. Okay. Later on, I would find out that he was much older than her, and they started dating when she was like maybe 21, and this man was actually like in his 60s. So that was an interesting dynamic there. Um, and she didn't want any kids because of what she'd been through as a child, and so she just like helped him raise his kids. So those were her kids. It was interesting, but really I just was like, oh wow, you okay, so that's cool. You're actually in a whole relationship and you're acting this out with me. Well, thank you for the empathy. But yeah, when we went to the house to go down the Joshua Tree, she said, yeah, I tried to see if he wanted to come out and meet you guys, but he said that he would meet us if the relationship lasted about beyond this weekend. And we were like, okay. And then she goes, yeah, I don't really have many friends. A lot of people don't like hanging around me. You'll see what I'm talking about. And as a person who has also people have said like, "Oh, you're interesting. Okay. Okay." And I understand people not being on each other's same energy level. Like I understand people whatever. I tried not to judge her. Also, I've had friends before that other people meet them and they're like, "What's happening here?" So I know, that some people can click with some people and some people cannot click with some people. I get that. But it was weird that she said people don't like me. Like even though I know I meet people and they're like, "She's not for me." I know I've been deeply, deeply loved by other people, and they have fought for the opportunity to stay in my life and vice versa. So I'm just very much like, nobody likes you? Nobody? Except for this man. Okay. So we get in the car, we drive down. That first night, everything is fine. It takes us a little bit longer than we thought to drive down. We get to our location, we go to a grocery store to like stock up. And here's where the other girl starts kind of showing her ness. We're in the store and she is making comments about everything me and the other girl about. So I told you the other girl was a personal trainer. So she was like, I need spinach. I can't have dairy milk. And I was like, okay, we're talking about what kind of coffee we like, what kind of roast. We're talking about what kind of wine. Now, the other girl had moved to LA. Let's give these people names, okay? We will call the girl who was having money issues, we'll call her Sarah. And we'll call the girl who had the older boyfriend and the traumatic past, we'll call her Tracy. So Sarah was watching me and Tracy talk about like what wine we wanted and what kind of coffee we drank and so on and so forth. And she was just like rolling her eyes at us and making all these wine is wine, guys. Coffee is coffee. Oh, you can't drink a certain type of milk. Give me a break. Oh, yeah. And then I asked her, I said, okay, so you say you like beer. Have you tried this beer? Do you like this? Do you know what kind of beer you like? Do you know what kind of like, what do you like? Do you like an IPA? Do you like a, I don't know. I like something like this. And she holds up beer Ritas, and I realized, I said, oh, she's extremely insecure about about her lack of experience in various worlds. Like she feels threatened by me and this other girl, me and Tracy, talking about nuance when it comes to picking things out. She's never done that. Also, I want to say the girl Sarah also struggled with her weight and with weight issues. So she would often talk about, how big she was and how uncomfortable and how things that had been said to her by her parents. And it was interesting watching that. I've said before, I self deprecate, I will. But one thing that I don't do is a constant stream of insults to myself in my regular life. It's only in situations where I feel like I might really be attacked. And so that's why I tend to do it online. But if I'm with people that make me feel comfortable, I'm not just going to walk around making fun of myself. And that is what she did. I mean, she had some issues. So anyway, we got the food, we went to our Airbnb, and when we arrived, there was a scorpion at the front door. There were bats outside, and there was a scorpion at the front door, and I was like, this is an omen. Hmm. But let me push past it. So I pushed past it. We went inside and we had gotten some food. We started eating, and me and Tracy, we started drinking the wine that we had. And Tracy kept drinking the wine and she kept drinking the wine and she kept drinking the wine. And I was like, that's cool. We're all relaxing. It is what it is. And Tracy also tells us, nobody sleeps with me. I don't sleep with people. And we were like, okay. And I'm thinking, but you've had a boyfriend for 18 years. What do you mean you don't sleep with people? She was like, nobody sleeps with me. I don't sleep with people. That's how I am. And so we were like, okay. So she drank the wine and got drunk enough to get really sleepy and went in and went to bed first. And before me and the other girl, me and Sarah went to bed, we actually shared like this big king bed in the other room. Before me and Sarah went to bed, I looked in there and checked on her, and she was spread out across the bed like a starfish. And I was like, all right, maybe that's why she says nobody sleeps with her. And maybe she didn't mean like her man don't sleep with her. She just meant like when she goes out, she doesn't share a bed with whomever. So me and Sarah, we go in the other room. We lay down in bed together. We're talking, we're sharing personal stories. I find out that not only is Sarah like really, really struggling financially, like there's a whole thing with that. She's struggling with her landlord at this house she lives in Compton. She is from a very, very small town in West Virginia. She had never even heard of Compton. I was like, you've never heard of Boys in the Hood? You never heard of like Dr. Dre? You never? She was like, no. And at one point, she asked me, she goes, "Do you know who Loretta Lynn is?" And I was like, "Yeah, coal miner's daughter. Sissy Spacek played her in the movie about her life." As a Black woman, I don't get the opportunity to not know everything. I got to know everybody, especially dominant white popular culture. I have to know that. I've always felt that way. That's probably because of how I grew up. But anyway, so I just realized like she was very ignorant to a lot of things. And being out in LA had really opened her eyes and kind of also broken her heart because, again, like financially, she was just really struggling. And yeah, she was struggling with her self esteem. It was just whatever. So we're having these conversations. And all of a sudden, we see the door open and we look over at it, and Tracy walks in. And Sarah goes, "Hey, Tracy, how are you?" She had like relaxed. She was feeling good. And you could tell she was happy to see her friend. Tracy didn't respond. She just kept walking. She turns around, she takes her pants down, and she begins to urinate on the bed that me and Sarah are sleeping in, that we're laying in. We start screaming her name, Tracy, 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 Tracy. And she goes, "Oh, sorry," runs out of the room, and eventually makes it to the kitchen where she pees on the floor. Gets up, goes back to her bedroom, and lays down. And we're like, so we get up, we look at her, we go back to our room, and we're like, okay, what the hell? And I start thinking about what I know about like sleepwalking and all that kind of stuff, and how it really is like your subconscious just going wild at night. And I'm like, all right. We might be a lot of that stuff that she talks about in class, a lot of that stuff that she brings up. It might be an issue with us tonight here. We'll see. So, but what we decide to do though is go ahead and close and lock our door so that if she thinks she can open it again, maybe it like wakes her up and she's like, oh crap, that's not right. And she continues to go wherever she's going to go to use the bathroom. Kitchen again, I don't know. So we close and lock the door and we're like, let's just go to sleep. We'll talk to her about it in the morning. Maybe 5 minutes later, she hits the door. She hits the doorknob. The doorknob is flipping out of control. She's trying to get in. And we are scared out of our minds. We're like, wait, what? And eventually she leaves that and she walks away. You can hear her doom, 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 like stomping outside. She slams into the wall. And then we hear her using the bathroom in the kitchen again. And this time, though, she's buck naked. And because Sarah got up and looked outside. So at this point, Sarah believes that Tracy has a demon inside of her, because Sarah also lets me know she is from a Pentecostal church in the Appalachian Mountains. Like, that's how she grew up. So I'm like, okay. So I've got to calm Sarah down. And at the same time, I'm looking to see what Tracy gonna do next. So I try and calm Sarah down, and we get to a point where we say, listen, what we might have to do is put some furniture or something in front of these doors, because this girl keeps bursting into our room and we're not gonna get no sleep. So we start moving stuff around. I actually still have a picture on my phone of Sarah moving all the things around the room, like frantically. So we're moving dressers, we're moving plants. We're just, remember when I said old girl was a personal trainer though? Arms were cut. She had hella strength. So we move the things around, we get back in the bed, we try and settle down and go back to sleep. Well, I think that's what we're doing. Actually, what happened is Sarah was on the phone dialing up, trying to get a hold of her relatives. She had her uncle who lived in the area or lived around the area on speed dial, and she was like, "You may need to come and get me. This girl is possessed by a demon." I'm in the background like, "It's not a demon. She just has a lot of trauma. She is not well. She should not be on the trip, but it's not a demon." And yeah, we're trying to like manage our anxiety. And we get to a point where we finally get a little bit calm, and we hear it again. Boom, on the doorknob, just ricketing around, moving around. And we hear, Tracy give up, stomp out of the room. This time she doesn't stop at the kitchen though. She keeps going. And we look across the room and we watch as one of the places where we put like a whole dresser in front of the door, Tracy bursts through that, knocks the dresser aside, bursts through the door, and stares at us. And then goes, "I'm sorry." Closes the door, goes to the actual restroom this time. When she comes out of the restroom, looks at us again. And we're like, "Hey, girl. Hey, can you see? Hey." And she just looks at us and walks away and goes back to her room and goes to sleep. At this point, we both agree that we're probably just not going to get any rest, because we don't know how long this is going to happen, how many times it's going to happen. And we're both pretty, even though I didn't think she was possessed by a demon, I was still pretty shaken. I was like, this is really out of pocket. And so we both end up staying up till about 5:30, just trying to make sure, like, if we go to sleep, it's not gonna. And what sucked was that the next morning we had plans to really, really get out and see like Joshua Tree and hike and do a bunch of other stuff, but we haven't had any sleep. And I'm not that type of person. I mean, I can do maybe like 5 hours and be good, but 2 hours, 3 hours, nah. The next day, Sarah is the first person to wake up, and I hear her in the kitchen talking to Tracy. I get up and I go in, and Tracy's like, "Oh my gosh, like I feel really rested. Like I feel really rested." And I look at Sarah and I'm wondering, like, what are we gonna like? How are we gonna handle this? And Tracy is she's like very happy go lucky. She just doesn't realize a thing. And finally Sarah goes, "Hey girl, do you remember what you did last night?" And we start telling her, and she's like, "Oh my God, oh my God." I'm like, "Okay, I didn't want to tell you guys this, but I actually, when I drink, I sleepwalk." She was like, "I actually hid my shoes, because in the past I've been known to grab my shoes, take them, and set out. And I knew like if I went out into the desert, like I might die or something. So I actually hid my shoes so I wouldn't be able to find them." And we were both just kind of looking at each other while she was talking. We were like, "Okay." And she says, "I actually went on a trip to Hawaii with some people a little while ago. And I told them, I said, at night, make sure you lock me in my room. Make sure my room is locked." And they did not understand. It was like a suite we were staying in, like where we had a couple of adjoining rooms, and they couldn't understand like why I needed my room locked so badly. But yeah, they were like, I was like, "Make sure my room is locked. Make sure." They said I tried to get out all night, kept getting up and trying to get out, kept getting up and trying to get out. "It only happens when I drink." That's why she proceeded to tell us, "That's why when I drink, I also need to smoke." And so today, what we need to do is go to a dispensary. And we were like, we probably need to pick up something, because yeah, I just, whew. So me and Sarah were just like, "So you knew that you acted this way, and you still set us up to come out here and suffer with you." We were not pleased. Sarah was extremely pissed. And now at that during that scene, that morning, Sarah could like play it off. That she was like through the rest of the day as she got sleepier and sleepier and it was so hot outside, she began to get more bitter and more angry about the situation. And every time we sat down to try and eat, we wrote and we did anything, Sarah would be snapping. She'd be snapping at that girl. And Tracy would snap back and they would have full on scream matches. Um, and it was incredibly uncomfortable. And it all came to a head when we did go to the dispensary. Remember, Tracy thought they were after her. We went to the dispensary and we finally find one and we drive up and they say, okay, you're going to have to fill out this form and give us your ID. And Tracy said, what's that for? So that we know, just have a record of anybody who's been here, who's taken, they'll have a record of me. And keep in mind, weed has been legal in California for a while, so on and so forth. But I do believe, and Tracy did say she has family members serving time for drugs, so on and so forth. So to her, it's you can't have my information. I'm not giving you anything. When Sarah heard this, she like burst out into tears and she decided to go into the place herself and spend her last few dollars on whatever joints she could get, whatever gummies, whatever. She offered me some of it. I said, "No, that's for her. I'm going to make sure that she has that tonight." And then Sarah took the rest of it. So Sarah ended up coming back to the Airbnb that night, fell asleep, and had a good night's rest. Tracy, I stayed up with her all night long. I made sure because she wanted to drink some more wine, so I made sure that she smoked bit of every last bit. She'd be like, "Do you want some?" Mm-mm. And we're talking about our lives and this and that, and I'm just waiting. I need it all gone. So eventually she was like, "All right, well, I'm gonna go ahead and go to bed." I was like, "You do that." And I stayed up to make sure that she stayed asleep. The next day, we were getting packed and ready to go. Sarah's still salty. Oh, she's still salty. And this time she's actually rested. But the biggest reason why she was so salty is because she was suffering with like her roommate issues. She was suffering with money issues and she thought she was coming on a fun trip and she had to be terrorized by this girl's whatever. And the thing was that I think, yeah, just nobody had time to waste like that. And nobody, it was just so we did go out that next day. We tried to have fun day together. Did not work out. Sarah and Tracy, the bickering did not stop. I just didn't say anything. And so by the time I got out of the car that day, my jaw was so tight from just sitting there like this. I mean, it was terrible. And you have people who will go through something like that and be like, "Oh, but we're still friends, right?" So basically, we all got home. I ended up letting Sarah stay with me for like a day or two because the house that she was living in, the person would not use the air conditioner, would not let her use the air conditioner. She had gotten, I mean, just things were happening. She didn't live in LA for very much longer at all. She ended up leaving the city. But I let her stay with me that night and we like went out to eat and I treated her to a meal. And I didn't have a lot of money, but I wasn't where she was. And we just talked about like how surprising it was, how none of us needed that. And she was like, "Okay, well, I have no problem cutting her off completely. I'll never speak to her again." I'll never, because they had gotten in some vicious arguments while they were out there, plus whatever she experienced that night. And I was like, "Yeah, I'm not sure what I'm gonna do yet, but I'll have to see." Because I think Sarah blocked her immediately. Like while we were like in the car before she dropped us off, Sarah had her blocked. So she would be trying to send. She was like, "Oh, everybody send pictures from the trip. Everybody do this." And Sarah was like, "Nope." Like she wasn't responding. She didn't get it. No, nothing. And Tracy was asking questions in the group chat. She was like, "Sarah, where's Sarah? Why isn't she sending any pictures or responding?" And so I responded to Tracy. I was like, I don't know. I think she is resting. And Tracy was like, "Well, I have a birthday party coming up and I'd love to." And I ended up writing her an email and I was just like, "Hey, what you did this weekend was fun. I'm not saying people can't sleepwalk, even though people commit murders, literally literal murders while they sleepwalk. So it's good to inform someone if that's something that you do. It's also good to practice self preservation. You're with a new group of people. We don't know you, we don't owe you anything. And for you to come to us with that, it would be the same thing if I was like, oh, when I get drunk, I get really violent and I beat people up and I beat everybody up in the group. I think drunk behavior is always interesting behavior because it's not the person when they're sober. But anytime you're in a position where you are severely inconveniencing people with your behavior, you owe them the right to at least tell them what might happen. And she did not do that to us. She did not give us that choice. And the bottom line for me was um this was just, it was one of the worst weekends of my life. I always tell people too, with me, I had been robbed before while I was in my home by myself. So anytime anybody disturbs my sleep when it comes to their behavior in the night, for me that's just a deep deep trigger. I told her that I feel like she was a strong person, but some of the other things she shared with me that night, I was just waiting on her to smoke the whole joint. Some of the things she shared with me there, she needs to see a professional. They need to work like it's deep, sis. It's deep. And at the end of the day, I I'm out. Like this is no, because she had talked about traveling more and doing this, and I was like, how are we gonna get a hotel together? How am I ever gonna feel safe? You're fine. You're like, hey, this is me. Oh, and then she had said this to us too. She goes, I can't believe you guys were like scared when I was sleepwalking. All I may have tried to do was eat. Isn't that a crime? Or I don't know. It was just incredibly uncomfortable and incredibly just like, no. So I had to go.
So I actually forgot to record my little snip snappy thank you for watching. Snip snappy, whatever. My normal little conclusion. But as always, thank you for watching.